Well, hello, darling. Christopher here, aka Plant Queen, and I am the author of You Grow Girl, Plant Queen's Lush Guide to Growing Your Garden. So Queen, whether you're a plant obsessed or a total lush little newbie, I am here to help. This is Houseplant 101. Queen, we all need a little support, especially our climbing green girls. So honey, here are my tips on how to help them thrive and make your own little moss pole. Welcome to the jungle. A lot of the green girls that we bring into our home are actually climbing green girls. So in the wild, there are a variety of plants that are actually epiphytic, which means that they grow on the surfaces of walls, trees, and other plants in a very harmonious way. We often find those climbing vines or climbing queens in hanging planters. I'm gonna bring her down, the pothos. And this queen is actually nicknamed the Devil's Ivy for a very interesting reason. This queen is actually considered an invasive species in states like Hawaii and Puerto Rico because she just grows so well. She grows like a weed in some states, which means that she'll thrive in your living room, honey, or your bedroom, or your bathroom, wherever you want to place this queen. I'm quite sure she'll thrive. And something that I've noticed with growing this queen is that when we let those leaves, those vines hang down, the leaves actually grow smaller and smaller and smaller. If you're hoping to have large pothos leaves, one of the best things that you can do is attach this queen to a moss pole. I've actually seen leaves just as large as a monstera, even larger than Monstera deliciosa leaves. So honey, get this queen a moss pole. So honey, this is a wonderful example of a moss pole situation for a green girl that loves to climb. This is the Monstera Dubai, and as you can see, this queen is clinging to that moss pole, honey. And as you can tell, the leaves are getting larger and larger and larger as she rises to the top. And so imagine her in the wild, stretching towards the canopy, reaching for that sunlight, and getting those larger leaves. So honey, this is the perfect example of what a moss pole can do for your green girl. As a plant parent, the best thing that you can do is to mimic the natural habitat of the green girls that you're bringing into your space. And honey, today we have a lush queen that I want to bring to the botanical stage. Who is she? She is the Rapidora Tetrasperma. And believe it or not, I know a lot of folks are really intimidated about making moss poles, but honey, it is one of the easiest things to do, and I am going to strut you right through. But honey, you ready? Let's get started. All right, queen, so this Rapidora Tetrasperma is growing really, really beautifully, and she has already begun to grow upwards towards the sky as she naturally does in her native habitat. If you take a look at the stems of this queen, you'll begin to notice that there are these brown little nubs, and these are plant nodes, and these are what our queens use to anchor themselves into the surfaces of other plants, trees, and walls. This is also a pathway for this plant to receive more water and more nutrients. All right, queen, let's get into it. So the first thing that you want to make sure that you have ready to go is the sphagnum moss. And so this is going to serve as the interior for the moss pole. And it's just so much easier to work with when it's damp and wet. And so I unpackaged it, put it in this bowl, and just put it in the sink and let water run over it. And now it is nice, light, and fluffy, flexible, and ready for that moss pole, honey. And now we want to get the structure that is going to hold that moss together. And so we have some hardware cloth or hardware net, It's similar to chicken wire. It has these little holes that allows for the roots to kind of go through and attach itself to the moss, which is exactly what we want. So we're just gonna measure this out. I'm just gonna make some room for myself because she's a handy queen when she needs to be, okay? You don't need to use a lot. You just wanna make sure that you have enough to wrap it around itself. And obviously you can cut it in terms of the height that you want. I'm gonna leave it at full length because I'm expecting this green girl to grow in all her lushness. And the Rapidora Tetrasperma, if you give them the environment that they really enjoy, they actually are very quick growers. So I'm quite sure in no time, she's gonna be above this moss pole, which is what I want, honey. And now I'm just gonna cut down. Straight little line, honey, straight little line. And now we're just gonna store this for another time, okay? And so basically it's gonna be something like this right here, all right? And now you just wanna make sure that you pack this with the moss, all right? Be generous with yourself, okay? Overindulge, overindulge. Little moss bay, right there. So if it feels tight, and hard to close, that is okay, because we have our zip ties that is going to help us make sure that we hold it together. All right, so I'm going to just add a little more right here, because why not add a little extra? I'm gonna put this queen to the side. She's trying to steal the show. Not yet, girl. All right. And so you do want to make sure that you're lining up the mesh just for consistency for the shape of the pole. Woo, yeah, look at that. Little instrument right there. Snap, snap, snap. Good job. And now I'm just gonna cut at the top just to make for consistency. And so I'm just gonna put her to the side because now we have to prep the green girl, all right? So we're gonna get ready to do a little repotting situation. These nursery pots are just temporary vessels for our queens as they move from the nurseries to plant shops to our home. And so we wanna make sure that we're giving her a more permanent planter. And so darling, we have one right here that is about 2 inches larger than the nursery pot. You don't want to go too large, right? Because then she'll be swimming in a sea of soil and that's not a good thing. Just the right amount of room, just like Goldilocks, just right, all right? I'm gonna take this hanging situation off. So moving is traumatic experience for us. Moving is traumatic for our green girls, okay? So we wanna make sure that we allow her time to settle into her new home. So typically I'll wait at least 2 to 3 weeks before repotting this queen, all right? And so some signs that this queen may be ready to be repotted if she's showing some new growth. There's a little leafling beginning to bud. And so I know that she is ready to be repotted into her new home, okay? She's serving that new growth realness. All right, honey. So now I'm going to depot her. And so you may wanna like just massage the pot a little bit. Ooh, yes, honey. So queen, I'm gonna make sure that I remove this old soil off her roots because I don't know where this soil been. Massage the root and be gentle because you do not want to destroy any of her root system. And let this be a therapeutic moment, honey. I love getting my hands dirty. If you wanna put a pair of gloves on because you're like, I don't wanna mess up my manicure, that is okay. That is okay. I don't mind getting my hands a little dirty, but she is good to go, queen. Now, a few sustainable plant parent tips, honey. So the first thing is that when it comes to these plastic nursery planters, one of the best things that you can do to be sustainable is to upcycle these planters, save them, and reuse them. I reuse them often when I am propagating a cutting and taking that cutting from water to soil. And so I found that plastic planters are really helpful in nursing the fragile roots and allows for the soil to retain moisture, which is really helpful for those fresh new roots that are trying to get adjusted to soil. Another sustainable plant parent tip, honey, is to actually compost that old soil that you have removed from your green girl's roots, all right? As you can see, there's some bits of sphagnum moss that I didn't use, and the old soil. You don't want to reuse this soil for any other plant, but what you can do is make sure it goes back into the earth, honey. So whether you have your own compost bin, or there's a neighborhood compost bin, a community compost bin, which is what I utilize, you can make sure that you dump it in there, and honey, you are giving back to Mother Nature, okay? All right, Queen, so now I have this lovely little planter for this green girl, and as you can see, there is a drainage hole, which is very, very important. So I'm an overwatering queen, and so making sure that there's no extra water that just collects at the bottom of the pot is just really helpful for me as a plant parent. So make sure you invest in planters with drainage holes. It's really, really helpful, and it's really good for the long-term health of our plant fam. And so the first thing I'm going to do is just make sure that this moss pole fits nicely. And so I'm going to have this be the front of the moss pole, and just want to make sure that it kind of matches up and that there's enough room. Oh, look at that. Oh my God. Potting soil is actually like one of my favorite things. Obviously, I'm a plant nerd because I'm geeking out about soil. Yes, that is what I geek out about these days. Potting soil is not topsoil. The soil that we experience in parks and in nature is not what is in this bag. This soil is specifically manufactured for plants in closed containers. The soil that we experience in nature is too dense and it's not made for house plants. So I'm just gonna get my hands dirty, get into it. I'm already standing on her own, honey. We love a queen that can stand on her own, okay? And so now I'm gonna take our Rapidora Tetrasperma and make sure those aerial roots line up with the moss pole. Ooh! And I think she's looking good. Don't worry if you're like, well girl, she's already close to the top of the moss pole. It's perfectly okay. You can basically just put a stick into this moss and then just add another moss pole right on top of it. So do not worry. The point is that we want to get her established with a moss pole so that she can begin to train her growth upward. Now I'm going to add a little bit of soil around her roots. You want to make sure that her roots are submerged in soil and gently push down. You don't want to go too hard because you could detach her roots from the stem of the plant, and we do not want that. So now you notice that she may begin to trail away from the moss pole. We want to train her growth and make sure that she is attaching herself to the moss pole, so she may need a little bit of help, okay? So we are going to use some plant tape, or in this case, plant Velcro, okay? Because what we fancy. And so moss poles are not only great in that they allow you to mimic the natural habitat of the plant, it also allows you to train the growth of this plant, right? And so I have Rapidora Tetrasperma in my apartment, and instead of having her just growing out of her pot and taking up a lot of space, I have her growing upward, which gives me more room for what? More plant, all right? And as she continues to grow, she will actually begin to anchor herself. So at a certain point, you won't even need the Velcro anymore. And that's the goal, and that's the point. And there you have it, honey. You have created your own little moss pole for a climbing vine, and she is going to love it, darling. And so in terms of the care for a moss pole, because it does take intentional care, obviously you want to make sure that you're watering this queen and testing the soil moisture so that you're not overwatering this queen, because we do not want her to go to that little botanical garden in the sky, all right? We want her to stay with you and grow and thrive. And so obviously you're gonna water her just as you normally would any other green girl. And then when it comes to the moss pole, you wanna make sure that this moss pole is staying damp. And so what you could do is take a mister and mist the moss pole, right? And that's a wonderful way for the aerial roots, those plant nodes that are lashing themselves onto the moss, to soak up water, which is going to allow that vine to continue to grow and allow those leaves to get larger and larger and larger, and that is the goal. Or something that you could do is water from the top. And so sometimes the water kind of just like falls out. So if you don't mind a little mess, that's fine. But if you take your time and you water from the top, the moss pole will begin to become saturated with water. And so that's another way that you can make sure that it's nice and damp and a wonderful environment for those aerial roots to grow and thrive. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Darling, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Handmade for more plant tips like this.